Board of Selectmen to consider when deciding whether or not to adopt a uniform or split property tax rate. So my question is, clearly we're not dictating, this does not dictate that we come up with a recommendation as to whether or not the tax rate be split. But can we, should we, if appropriate, come up with a recommendation as to whether or not to split the tax rate? It may be that we may decide it's just a political issue. We may decide there's no clear consensus. But if we did come up with a clear consensus on that question, I think we would be doing the Board of Selectmen in the town a disservice not to recommend.
Anybody have any comments?
I agree.
I do too, actually.
I mean, what would we be sitting here for if we're not going to be of service to everybody concerned in the whole town?
I think it's, to me, it's clear that there should be a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. There's no other reason why we would be here at the end result. That would be, I think, a goal of this committee.
Why is that even a question? It's obvious why we're here, to make a recommendation whether or not to split the rate. It couldn't be any simpler than that. If you want to make it 10 pages long, be my guest. But I don't think we need to have a mission statement other than what it is. And it is to make a recommendation. And if you don't think so, you shouldn't be sitting here.
No, what I think is that the mission statement is vague on this. I'm not.
Why is yay or nay vague?
If it said yay or nay in the mission statement, it wouldn't be vague, but it doesn't. And it doesn't say we should
Who
recommend.
wrote the mission statement? Oh. Who says we have to go by what he said?
I'm not going to argue that point with you, but I just think it'd be good as a committee before we even get started if we just have an agreement on.
Well, I think you got the cart before the horse. We ought to have a committee before we get into the mission statement.
I think we need to do the evaluation before
Yes.
we decide
Oh.
what we're going to do, what kind of report we're going to present to the board.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And in the final analysis, it is the Board of Selectmen that does make the decision.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what recommendation this committee may or may not make.
That's correct.
So that's all I would
Agree with
say.
Are
everything
you
you said.
saying that we do the whole thing and then decide whether we give a recommendation?
I'm saying that we need to do the study first
Yeah.
before we decide if we're going to do a recommendation, and then if we do a recommendation.
I don't understand.
I don't understand that either. I don't understand why we would be sitting here if we weren't going to give a recommendation, whether we keep it the way it is or we do the dual classification. I would think that that's something we should know from now, that we're going to have as an end result of coming up with the final decision.
And I think it should be very clear that we don't know what that decision or recommendation would be at this point,
Right.
because there's a lot of data collecting and a lot of conversation that needs to take place and a lot of hearing from the community and different situations. There's a tremendous amount of data that needs to be collected, but in my mind, the data will be clear. What we collect will tell you what is best for Chelmsford and its people.
That's what
Yeah.
that's why I thought, that's what I thought I was getting into, to be honest with you.
I would suggest that you elect a chair of this board.
Well, let's recognize a couple of things that occurred, right? We have two members here of the Board of Selectmen who both indicated when the committee was first proposed that they were not looking for a recommendation. We also have a charter statement which, while it doesn't say it's looking for a recommendation, it was explicit that the charter or that the mission statement should be reviewed by this committee. So if we're going to go in a slightly different direction than what the initial thought was from the Board of Selectmen, I think they've given us the leeway to do that. If that's how if that's how this committee wants to go, I think that's a valid change to make. Let's just call it a change, though.
A change to?
The mission statement.
I don't think the mission statement needs to be changed. I think it's vague.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it could be read to be what I think we're saying it should be, which is, if possible, we can make a recommendation.
So you want to expand it. You want to expand on what's there already, make it more
No,
clear?
no, I just want us to have an agreement. I just want to make sure we're all in agreement on what is possible.
Okay, I understand now. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Okay. I'm, okay.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay, I apologize for subverting the process, but now to move it on. Given our discussion, I would like to nominate Mike Rigney as the chair of this committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further nominations? Okay, Mike, do you accept?
I do accept.
Okay.
Thank you.
All in favor of Mike Rigney as chairman?
Aye.
It's all yours, Mike.
Okay. Well, then I will open the nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Mary Franz for vice chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other nominations? Okay. Seeing none, nominations are closed. Mary, would you accept?
Yeah, accept.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 9-0. Congratulations.
You might have inquired as to Mike's health before agreeing.
Or my vacation
I was
plans.
about to say, you better show up. Okay.
Should we have a secretary?
We need somebody to take notes, and it's not going to be me.
All right, I think, and that's probably a further question. Can we get somebody from the town
I
to
can check.
do minutes?
I can check tomorrow and see if we can, but I know they do have a hard time getting somebody to
Okay,
do some
so
meetings.
I think, this is going to be a fairly high-profile committee, and the minutes are a good way for people who aren't able to watch the meetings to keep up. So if you would inquire into that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I can do that. I mean, I can do tonight's. I'll be willing to do tonight's, but
Then I will open nominations for a secretary.
although I would.
Nominate Pat Wojcik.
Oh, no, I really didn't want that.
Think of it as motivation. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for secretary? Seeing none, I will close the nominations. Pat, will you accept?
At least for now. I might resign it, but I'll take it for now.
All right, your enthusiasm is noted. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Opposition? Unanimous. Thank you. Sorry about that.
First call.
Yeah,
We're
that's...
rethinking that appointment
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Okay. I think, do we want to have a further discussion about review of charter? I do think that kind of
Not
falls.
on the agenda.
It falls under committee organization, I think. We can talk about how we want to do things, and you can read committee organization as meaning only election of officers, or you can mean it that you can have a slightly broader discussion about what we think the meetings ought to look like, who we've been asked to bring in expert witnesses, who we might reach out to along those lines.
It's not in the agenda.
I think under committee organization,
Can I, just given what I was ranting about before, can we clarify communications for starters? And how
Yes.
we're going to communicate?
Yes.
Are we sending out agendas? Are they going to be posted? If so, where are they going to be posted, so we all know that?
so the agendas must be posted
I
by
know-
law, right? Two
Right.
days before the meeting on the town website. I will be responsible for also emailing you, emailing each one of you the agendas as soon as they are developed, which is typically going to be
Appreciate that.
about 50 hours before the next meeting.
It'd be nice to walk in here with an agenda.
Yes, I agree.
I didn't. And just to clarify that we're all on a common email list and find out if it's going out, because I don't know what happened. As I say, Dan and I both said we've got one email, we didn't get two relative to
I
this.
sent out I have a global IT that
I don't know what happened, Frank, but
I know what happened. You spelled her name wrong.
Mary, I thought I had that covered.
No, actually, you spelled her name wrong. Now I remember seeing that.
what?
He left out the T, maybe?
Okay, that would explain it.
That would do it.
Sorry, I remember seeing that.
I apologize.
Okay.
Other organizational questions? No, I think this is good. We should,
No, I
we're kind of starting from zero.
And
So-
as I said, I had gotten the one email announcing the date and nothing else after that. And having been on other committees and sending out emails with agendas and things of that sort, I just sort of figured whoever was organizing the meeting would be sending all that out. And clearly, now I understand why I didn't get the information about
Are you going to stick with your current spelling of your name?
my name is spelled, the last name is spelled Frantz,
You're going to stick with that?
and that's the one I stick with, yes.
Okay. Noted.
Thank you.
If there's no desire to talk about further roles or organization of the committee, then we can move on to the next item of new business.
You know what, wait,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Helen.
Should we have phone numbers going for each one of us in case we need to do anything like that? I know on the
I
UMass.
think 6
We
or
did.
7 people at least have their phone numbers online. We can, are those good phone numbers? Are those house numbers instead of cell numbers, or vice versa? Should we just pass a list around and?
I prefer a list being passed.
Okay. Evan, do you want to just start it and send it this way? I guess let's do, just so that there's no confusion, preferred emails and preferred phone numbers. And then I can take that and email everybody tonight.
Sounds a good idea.
I only have one of each, so it's got to be preferred.
Well, that's easier, isn't it?
That's right.
Okay. If that's it for organization, then let's talk about future meeting dates. I think our expectation is that we're going to meet roughly every other Monday on non-Board of Selectmen Mondays. That leaves us 10 or 12 meetings, really, before the decision has to be made on FY19's.
Now, I don't know what your expectation is. I would hope that we would have something to the Board of Selectmen by the end of October so that they have their November meeting to discuss it, because waiting until the last minute to get it
That's
to
a good
the
point.
board might delay the assessors getting their information out to get the tax bills out on time. So I think we should.
Okay,
we
that's
should-
more like 8 to 10.
Well,
if-
although the Board of Selectmen in July is only meeting once, in August is only
Right.
meeting once, so we could have 3 meetings those months.
Well, we could. I mean, we'll see what people's schedules are like. I mean, I think everybody knew that this was going to be a summertime committee. So, but summers can be hard for people. Also, just getting people in, right? And I guess that's something we can talk about next time around. Is how many different people do we want to bring in? Do we want to hear from the MMA? Do we want to hear from other organizations that have looked at this in the past? Are we going to try to book one of those folks every week? Or are we going to try to book them once a month? And also, what kind of work is this committee actually going to do? It's one thing to ask the assessors to provide information. We can do that kind of as we sit around, but if we want to do a little bit more heavy lifting and dive into it ourselves, it may not, we may not be able to turn things around in a single week.
Sure.
That said, should we just, do you have a calendar for the selectmen for
I-
the next few months?
I do have the
You might
dates.
wanna
that-
skip
Okay,
along, 'cause
so-
I had to-
Can you start laying out the Mondays that are open?
Right now?
Yeah.
Sure, okay. Well, next Monday would be, but that might be a little, I mean, I wouldn't be able to make it next Monday, I'm out of town, but
Okay.
everybody else could make
Okay.
it, that's fine.
So
Maybe it'd be shorter, it'd be easier if you tell us when the Board of Selectmen is meeting over the next few months.
Okay, we're meeting June 25th,
Okay, so that's, yeah, 6/18 is open.
and then the next after that would be, the only meeting in July we have right now is July 23rd. So we could,
Okay.
the
And
second.
have you got anything booked yet for later?
In August, the only meeting we're having is the 13th.
Okay,
And then in November is when we start the every other weeks, starting with September 10th.
September.
September 10th, September 24th, and then October 1st, and then we get close to town meeting, and so that kind of mucks
Right,
things up too.
right. And we'll have Labor Day.
Right.
That's, I think that's a no-go for us. Veterans Day, that's middle of October, right?
No,
That's
it's
Or
November.
November?
November 11th.
Okay.
November.
All right, and you think we should be done by then?
I think well by then, yes. The, we have the Board of Selectmen has a meeting, November 19th, at which time they, if there's gonna be any changes, they really need to have a decision by then on what those would be. I think that would be, okay, Frank's nodding his head.
Okay, that's the drop dead time, so that they can get the paperwork in. Yeah. Okay. All right, well, how do you want to do this? Shall I send out a list of proposed dates as well? And I guess I'm happy to do that. The big question being, do we want to meet again next Monday?
You're gonna
Yes.
kill me.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure if I can make next
It-
Monday. I
it-
definitely cannot make the 9th, though.
I think we should take advantage of any date we can.
Okay. All right, so I'll start with that, and lay out the rest of the Mondays, and just try to make sure there's no obvious conflicts. We can reschedule if we have to, but.
I think it's really important that if anybody cannot make a meeting, that somebody, or the chair, or the secretary, or the vice chair, calls that person after the meeting to catch them up.
Right, yeah.
So that they
I think-
understand what transpired.
Yeah, I think there has to be some discussions, but the minutes can play part of that, and
True.
the video of the meeting can
Yep.
also help.
Right.
The other thing is, I don't see any reason we can't allow remote participation if people really want to do that, right?
That is allowable, yes.
So.
Mhm.
So if you want to call in from the beach house. All right.
Ken,
Yes.
given what John had talked about relative to the mission statement,
Yes.
can we, sort of put on the agenda for next
Sure.
time, maybe early on? I think that's an mission statement set up by what the Board of Selectmen, who established the
Agreed.
committee, would like to see us do, but I think we, as a committee, need to adopt either that
Agreed.
mission statement word for word, or our own mission statement, or whatever, and put it to, and so it becomes ours.
Mm-hmm, I agree. That should be the first thing on the agenda. So, yeah, I guess prepare your thoughts on that. I'm not inclined to call for a mandatory decision. I think what I've already heard tonight suggests that the committee isn't gonna push it if there's a significant split. What we're looking for is some kind of consensus.
Mike, you had mentioned that the Board of Selectmen proceedings indicated no recommendation.
Verbally,
Right.
I believe, yes.
Are we able to get some insight into that tonight, rather than take up agenda time next week?
It's not on the agenda.
I think it's arguably allowable under committee organization.
I
mean, I
don't
think
agree.
If you think we've moved past it.
I don't think there's any harm
I think-
being done.
You were one of the people who
It gives us,
suggested that. Do you
Well,
have-
then why don't we open it up to the floor and have everybody speak?
well,
I
And
think
tell
there-
us what they think.
There will be a
Sir-
time for public input. It's
Not tonight.
No, I agree with that.
This says, call to order, organization of the committee, future dates, end of story.
This is part of organizing the committee. We're trying to decide what we're going to do.
But you've already moved past that. And it's not specific.
I am pretty sure the chair is allowed to take items out of order and to circle back if there's no objection. Is there any objection to me circling back to committee organization?
I'd like to move that you do circle back
I'll second that
Prior.
motion.
item.
All
No,
right.
no. I
Okay.
vote no.
All right, my understanding is that if it's not unanimous, it can't be done. So, we're done tonight, I think.
Is it per chair, would you be able to reconsider yourself without a committee? approval?
No, I think through the rules of order, if it's not unanimous, we'll move on. So I have action items from tonight. Pat is gonna look into whether or not we can get a recording secretary for the meetings. I am going to take the contact sheet and send out a group email with everyone's phone numbers and email addresses. I would appreciate it if you'd all return it to me so I can make sure I didn't misspell anything. And in addition to the contacts, I will send out a series of dates for future meetings, including the 18th. The last thing I'd ask you all to do, in addition to thinking about the mission statement, would be to think about, again, one of the things that we were asked to provide was testimony from outside experts. If you have contacts, somebody who might be willing to come in and talk to us for half an hour, for 15 minutes, or for an hour if they have that much to say. The sooner we can get reaching out to some of these folks, the easier it'll be to get us on their schedule. All right.
Are you looking
Sorry.
for, excuse me,
Sure.
in terms of contacts, professional individuals, like real estate industry, government, anything in particular, or does it matter?
I think we can talk more about it next time, I think, but what I'm imagining right now is people who have either had experience introducing classification or who have been working in situations where classification was used as a tool by the town and either it went well or it went poorly. Something that we can provide, previous experiences we can provide to the selectmen.
You're not looking for just opinions from professionals?
I think informed opinions would be okay, right? I mean, I think we all understand that people are going to have different points of view on this question, right? And some people are going to be able to see see it in a good light, and some people are going to see it in a negative light. As long as they can kind of explain why they're seeing it, positively or negatively, I think it's valuable for to hear from both sides. I'm not worried about people having an opinion.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mike,
Yeah.
can I suggest as an agenda item for next time that we, Frank has provided us with information that we set aside a time that if any of us have questions, I mean, Frank is here tonight and Sam and that, if this has caused us to have questions relative to this, that we have a chance to clarify those, we're using their expertise, and that we set that as a specific agenda item.
Or if there's other data we might like.
Yeah, I think both of those things are going to occur. We are going to have some questions about what they
Right.
provide, and we are going to want additional information. I think,
I mean,
in terms of,
for next week, for starting to give us some meaty stuff to do is
Yeah.
have a chance, I mean, what are we doing next week at this point? I don't quite
Mm-hmm.
know. We're suggesting experts to bring in, but I think we start with what the material is we have, and if we have any questions about that.
right, we have experts
As-
here
put
too.
that out.
I think that's, right, we'll start with that, and I suspect you guys are going to be recurring guests on the show.
I'll be here next week, sir.
And in terms of, as questions get developed, I think generally I try to close with a review of action items. So if things come up in discussion along the way, we'll try to, let everybody try to note them down, and we can review them at the end. If you also just want to bring a list of questions, we can consolidate them all and pass them along, and if they don't have the answer immediately, then they'll be able to get it, or they'll be able to point us in a different direction to go looking for the answer.
And at risk of running afoul of today's agenda, I think we should all publicly thank Frank for providing all of this information. Thank you. And I have a question. Do I get to keep the binder when we're all
No,
done?
take the papers out, please return the binder. This concludes our-
You already paid for it, you keep it.
All right, if there's no other business, at 7:31, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Where is this letter from Mr. Diggs with the mission statement?
There is a mission statement in the 423 Selectmen's packet.
I have an extra copy.
We tried to talk about this during the meeting, sir. You didn't want to talk about it.
That's right, the meeting's over.